Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Neuroshambles. Thanks for joining me, Neuroshamblers. Thanks also for your kind emails and messages of support following the last episode about acquiring life skills. It's always nice to know that other people are going through the same thing. I had a particularly lovely email from Gemma who wanted to reassure me about the future of my neurodivergent family. She said, just wanted to email following the latest episodes. I thought this might give you some hope for the future. My dad is autistic and PDA, undiagnosed, which is somewhat of a miracle in itself as it's so obvious. His mantra through life has been, I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And I truly believe that's how he survived. He's well into his 70s now. He's managed not to anger the wrong person in spite of trying. He's had a career, a family, and a small circle of people he either likes or tolerates, including me and my mum. It's not been easy for him, and he has some horror stories from growing up, but he's happy. And what gives me hope is that our kids have the advantage of a diagnosis, greater understanding of themselves, and a hopefully changing social attitude towards neurodivergence too. Thank you, Gemma. That was so nice to receive, and as you probably could tell, that a lot of what you said alludes to how I perceive Jay is going to pan out in the long term. There, I'm just hopeful that I end up being one of the small circle of people he tolerates. Anyway, enough of that. We've got another great show lined up where we are going to be meeting a new guest. We'll be talking about a new topic of the week, and we'll also be looking at the positive side of things with neurodiversity champions, some tiny epic wins, and of course we're going to have some what the flip moments. So I'm going to stop banging on and we'll start.
Meet the guest.
So my guest for this week is someone who might be familiar with any of you neuroshamblers who've sought help navigating the torturous process of applying for an EHCP. She was mentioned as one of our neurodiversity champions in episode 8, the very appropriately named So Much Fucking Admin episode. And this is all because of the amazing service she delivers as part of what is Send Family Instincts. So I am delighted to be able to welcome this week's guest. It's Jess Cain.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I was laughing when you said the admin thing.
Yes.
Like, I just love it. So it's really funny to me that everyone else hates it so much.
Everyone's going to have a special interest, Jess.
I know, yeah. I'm just lucky to have admin as mine. I realised what it is. For me, it actually makes me calm, organising words. So I'm not actually I'm reading the words and I'm like building, I'm not going to say a puzzle, but I'm building a picture of what's going on for the family. It's like an investigation. It's like doing a Wordle or something for some people.
Okay.
But because when I'm going through if I'm going through dysregulation or like a meltdown, then I do working documents or admin, and it's like someone else might line up cars or colours.
Yeah. And you just line up people's lives.
I do, yeah. I just line up the words and like make them. And then I'm really into justice, so I'm like, take
awesome.
that.
That is such a positive way of regulating, isn't it? Awesome. So obviously, when I introduce any guest to Neuroshambles, it's also it's really useful to know what neurodivergencies you have at play in your household. So tell me about your lot, Jess.
Okay. Well, should I tell you about myself as well?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, as a family. Okay, so I'm diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and I'm PDA.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed in 2021.
Right.
So I was late diagnosed as an adult, and it was actually because one of my younger twins, I was realising that he was PDA,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going through a diagnosis process for him. And he's a twin and he's in a big family. And I didn't want him to be diagnosed alone. So everyone always said around me that I was autistic, but I'd always been told I had like mental health problems.
Right.
But I thought, you know what, I'm going to go through it before him so that then when he comes to his process.
There's not that stigma, I guess.
It's not a lonely thing.
They should do this thing where like they just look at the whole family.
Oh, well,
as a job lot.
Funny you should say that. So I've got 5 kids,
Yeah.
and I'm a lone parent. I do co-parent with their dads, and one of them's a foster. So my kids have got 2 different dads, and then my foster son, I co-parent with his grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a massive neurodivergent shamble.
It sounds like a sitcom, Jess.
It is. And at the heart of it is me, just being joyful all the time. So I've got 2 15-year-olds who are both boys. One's my foster son. He has got recognised SEN in school, but it's to do with social, emotional, mental health.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old is home educated now because he identifies as autistic.
Right.
And he's got a PDA profile, and the school have done lots of tests. They agree, he's on the pathway for a diagnosis, but he doesn't find it necessary to get one. So there's 2 of us in my family who are diagnosed PDA, and then my daughter, who's 12, she also is identified as being autistic by the school and herself. Right. Mm-hmm. She's home educated. And then my PDA 9-year-old has a twin called Stanley, and he is the one who everyone says is meant to be neurotypical. But then he comes out with things like when all the other PDAers are quiet because he's surrounded by loads of us, he'll go, "Do you know, I often just think about things all day long," or something. He'll come out with this thing, and I'm like, oh. Here we go. But so he's got quite a different profile to the rest of us. So we that's something we navigate.
He's like the little control subject. Right?
He is. But he's quite funny to watch because when you have a big family, I always think it's good to make a joke, or I try and talk about how difficult it is to parent, because being diagnosed, I think it opens the door to kind of go, well, it is really hard, actually, Mm-hmm. And so I quite enjoy watching Stanley. He's got quite a way of working around PDAers because he's had to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you for introducing us to your neuroshambolic household. We've got lots to cover in this episode, so let's crack on with it.
What's the topic of the week?
So this week's topic of the week has been requested by quite a few people, and it is one that is particularly relevant to my own neuroshambolic household because it's something that definitely impacts on our everyday life, and that is the subject of siblings. So as you may know, if you've got a neurodivergent child, the chances of other children you have being neurodivergent are increased. Just to be clear, that's not by osmosis with the other ones.
No.
It's the strong genetic links to the parents who have autism and ADHD, and it's kind of passed on from them. Now, obviously, having multiple kids in a neurodivergent household is tricky. Even if the other kids are neurotypical, you've got to balance those different needs out when you're parenting. And so if you've got sort of more than one neuro-exceptional kid, as I do and as you do, these issues are magnified many, many times over. So what I wanted to do in this episode is shine a light onto some of these particular challenges that we face and discuss how parents of siblings with competing needs manage to keep their shit together.
We don't.
Well, yes, I know. And that's also okay. That's also okay to acknowledge. I mean, that's kind of, I think that's a very important part of neuroshambles.
What I like is I think actually this is a topic which, it causes significant difficulties. I'm talking, difficulties that are on a serious degree involving like police input, mental health, so all of those big subjects. But actually, sometimes when that is your life day to day, the way your podcast is, where it approaches topics which are really challenging in more of a like, fucking hell, this is my life, what am I going to do about it? And you almost approaching it in that manner, because you can't escape these subjects and people don't want to talk about them. They're behind closed doors, and you're looking at your children, sometimes I'm looking at my children thinking, oh my God, I can never leave the house again. Like, people are looking at us wondering why my children are like, attacking each other, or they're just swearing across supermarkets, and when parents understand, they get it. And a lot of the times you've got to find humor.
You either laugh or you cry, and I choose laughter most of the time.
Yeah, but it's I think when people see me, I do a lot of social media, like videos, and I'm always very buoyant and very upbeat, and I've done like and that is what I'm like all the time, but that is also because it's a necessity, because like you say, if I wasn't like that, if I didn't choose to be like that, then it sometimes it's so hard that you're not really sure where to go forward.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
what parents need to hear, that is normal,
Yeah, and that they're not alone in this,
Yeah.
because it's so easy to kind of look around and go, I'm the only one with this absolute shit
Yeah.
show going on behind the door.
Yeah.
And you're not, guys. You're really not. So one of the biggest problems, I think, for me in my household is because all my kids have very, very different profiles. The
Yeah.
hardest thing about having siblings is that they trigger each other. It's
Yeah.
like really massively. Like we spend so much of our time, I think, and rightly so, getting our kids to unmask and to be their authentic selves. And
Yes.
then when you kind of get to that stage, you realize that sometimes their authentic self is really annoying.
And you find yourself, I don't know if you do, I find myself saying things like, my friend was over the other day, and at one point we were like just sitting there having a glass of wine, and I went, can you get your finger out of that pie now? Get it out of the pie now. And like, she's just going, oh my God, the stuff that you say. But actually, I have to, it's like that balance, because if I don't interject when they're triggering each other, and let, even though they're PDA, I have to let the PDAs know that I am leveling things up and I'm making sure justice happens, because otherwise they go for it like full force, So it's almost like you're constantly, it's exhausting, because you're constantly managing the level of overwhelm, so that
Because
it doesn't explode.
if you don't step in, then it's a major thing, because it's not just a case of when I say triggering, I don't mean like in neurotypical households, siblings annoy each other. They get annoyed, but this is a whole other level, because it's actually, you're triggering the fight, flight, freeze response in kids. It's it's beyond irritation. It's borderline meltdown, and that's when it becomes a big issue.
It can be it can be very violent. I have multiple of my children who cannot be left in a room without an adult. Because together, because it will become instantly physically violent. So, like, for example, in the mornings when my twins are getting ready, my older kids like get ready for school, but if my twins are getting ready for school, my son, who's PDA, is woken up and he's dysregulated, which is quite often. I will have to scaffold so that he comes with me everywhere I go, including into the shower, and just sit on the toilet. Because if, he'll go, I'm all right today, I'll be outside. And then I'll go in the shower, and it will be, this morning, for example, it was like, his brother was wearing his socks, but they weren't actually his socks, and so this stuff, but like you say, in a neurotypical family, you might go, mate, you're wearing my socks, give them back. In a family which is neurodivergent, and you have multiple PDAs or people who go into fight, fawn, there is instant explosion, which can be like a safety concern.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you have to step in as an adult. So it's really difficult to navigate that.
So it's interesting that you kind of talk to your is he 9, did you say?
Yeah.
You talk to him about sort of having to be with you, and so he knows that that's a trigger for him, and that he's very self-aware, which is quite interesting, and that you are very open with him about saying, you're going to come into the bathroom because I don't want this to kick off.
We have a funny family, really, because we've been through life experience. So that's something really important to say about my family, is that we have been through lived experience of different types of trauma as a team,
Okay.
It's affected us all, and it's resulted in behaviours and activities that it's been, we've understood ourselves as humans through what we've lived through. Also, it's really important that I say I have worked as a respite carer. So for the council where I work, I've looked after young people and children with my children there, and these children were PDA profile, ODD, ADHD, very explosive, but they couldn't go to any other respite, and they had a connection with me. So their parents said, can they come to my house? So, for example, one child I looked after for about 2 or 3 years, and through lockdown, she came every weekend.
Wow.
And her profile in a special school, she would have a 2-to-1 ratio.
Okay.
She had a very, very external display of dysregulation. And so my kids had already witnessed that before my son started to really, he was quite young at that time. So his behavior was like toddler behavior. But then as he grew up and I was like, wow, he's autistic like me, I'd already dealt with it professionally for a long time. So it kind of, I probably deal with my kids in a professional way rather than as a parent. If,
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I do not deal with that in a very professional way. it's it's like if I know
what do
Jay is
you do then? What do
well,
you
Jay,
do?
well, Jay is the one that will be likely, Jay is the one that becomes more kind of aggressive. And if he's dysregulated, we know it straight away. You just have to look at his face in the morning
Yeah.
when he wakes up. He wakes up with that set, angry face, and you're like, okay, I'm going to need to make accommodations here.
Yeah.
So I will typically sort of just clear everyone out of his way so that he
Yeah.
comes down the stairs, he goes in and has his breakfast. The other two have been shuffled into a separate room and I'm told to not make any noise.
When you're doing that, and what you're doing is you're doing exactly what people would do professionally or in a school setting. What they would do is if a child was displaying very extreme behavior, they don't try and move the child, they would remove the children from the room. So when you're looking at like risk assessments, high level, that's what you do. You
We
remove the
constantly
other
do that, aren't we?
people. Yeah.
It's a
So
constant risk assessment in any
yeah.
situation, I think, especially like because they're triggering each other, and we understand their triggers because Otto's triggers are very different from
Yeah.
Jay's triggers, and he will implode rather than explode, and obviously we want to avoid that as well.
Yeah.
India's got her own triggers as well, and gets really frustrated and really furious, and so it's all about balancing that, like trying to work out what's going on. And
It's very, very loud. And actually, something that I think is really important is we all behave differently in meltdown, or
right,
in
okay.
dysregulation. So one of my children will be very triggered all the time. And no matter what you do for him, he's triggered all the time, right?
Yeah.
You cannot make his life okay. Like he's triggered if the sun is hot, he's triggered if the rain is wet. Like he just cannot manage. And he's got to be in control all the time of the entire family. And he's the youngest in the family. So like that's not going to happen. So, often I'll be able to say to him when he's being like very controlling to me, and it feels like it's becoming overwhelming for me, then
Yes.
I will say to him, listen, dude, I'm PDA as well here. Like if there's any, I'm older than you. Like I've been PDA longer than you. Like, and you're like telling me what to do and it's stressing me out. So because we all have those profiles, it's like we have to be honest, and I have to keep telling everyone. So when I remove my kids from a room, I will tell them why it's happening, and I will. Some people won't do that, but I am open in my house about that because I'll go, listen, we're going to leave the room now to let Harry calm down. I know it doesn't feel that fair on you guys, but actually it's the best thing to do now. And then we can all come back in when Harry's ready and we can get on and have a good time,
I love that. I love that you're sort of so open and you can kind of narrate that, I guess. I mean, because that's a constant thing that I have with my life. Like, how much do I sort of talk about that kind of thing? Because India is only 6,
Yeah.
and might not necessarily get it. And Otto, he's becoming a bit more aware. And I mean, they get that when Jay's got his face on, just to get out of the way. They know
Move
that
away.
that doesn't need narration. Everyone
You
knows
can
what's going
you
on
can
there.
use like age appropriate words. Like, listen, he's a bit like, I make it kind of more funny. So I'd be like, oh, he needs a little chill time. Need a little chill time on your own now, dude. You stay in there, we'll go in here, and it's kind of, but to be honest with you, the reason that I've done that, as I've said, is because, from a very young age, my children had witnessed, I'm very open about this, but I was
Hmm.
of domestic abuse in my marriage. And so my children already at 4 and 6 and 2 had witnessed quite extensive behaviours that,
Yeah.
so you end up having much more open discussions
Hmm.
because, geez, you suffer abuse in front of a 4-year-old autistic child, and they are going to be asking you every question.
Yeah, of course.
Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? Why is this happening? So it's created a culture in my family that I do know is quite different to how other people live.
The thing that I kind of struggle with a little bit is when I'm asked why one of the other siblings is treated differently, right? Because when I grew up, um, you have this vision of your parenting, don't you? You go,
Yeah.
oh, when I have kids, I'm gonna be like this kind of parent, and I had this vision of the all of my. It's not even a vision, it was a principle. I'm going to treat all my kids the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
right? We're going to follow the same rules. There's going to be house rules and we'll live by those rules. We might even agree them. We might even have a little sit down and a chat about what the rules we want to live by. And
And now
that
you
is
sit down and you go,
gone.
guys, and they go, fuck off. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh, God, okay,
okay. I just wanted to get some rules.
I'll cross that rule out.
Yeah, no swearing. That's gone. Yeah, but it's a very different world, isn't it? Because that sort
It
of
is.
ideal, because that's how I was raised. I was raised that everyone that fairness and equality in our household was quite important, and it is to a degree. Well, it's equity rather than equality, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not. You have to make the right accommodations for the right child.
You do, and that's why it's so important. And I mean, I'm not telling people what to do. Like you say, I parent in a way that I think only I do, because I know when people come to my house, it's like they're watching a zoo or a show or something. Like, wow. But I have loads of fun with my kids, and I manage to do things with them, which even professionally,
Mhm.
those children who I looked after, I was taking them places and doing things with them which they were never able to do with other adults. And the
Yes,
only way I did that is because I had no hierarchy. Like, I listen to
that's the thing,
children
isn't it?
of
Yeah.
any age, yeah.
Hmm.
They've got shit to say which I want to hear, and a lot of the time they're cleverer than me, right? And they'll tell me stuff, and I mean, not on EHCPs. Let's just get that one straight. But a lot of the time they tell me off, and they're right, yeah. So if I let them tell me off, or if I let them, the only thing I'm very strict on all the time is, if there's my kid and anyone I've looked after knows, if there's a safety risk, then
Yeah.
I am going to intervene, and I'll tell them, like, if we go somewhere, like we go skiing, right? We went on a skiing holiday, just us, me with my kids. None of them, only one of them had skied before, yeah. But we had a great time. But what I say to them, right, there was one day the snow was coming in. It was like they'd all had a lesson, and they're like crazy like energy. So they were
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
skiing day in, yeah. There's all this cloud coming in, and you can't see in front of your face, and they're all going, we're going up the hill. I'm like, we're not going up the hill, we're in Bulgaria. So they went into the ski shop, and they got the ski man to give them tabards to wear, because they said we were going up the hill. And I had to have this like meeting with them where I said, if we're going up that hill, then we are neurotypical, and you do exactly what I say, right? And that is the only way I'm getting on that chairlift. And they're all going, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. But I was like, when I say stop, you stop. When I say go, you go. Don't, you know. And so when it comes to safety.
Did they do it? Did that
yes,
work?
Because I let them do anything they like the rest of the time. Like, you know, if they swear or they upset people, you know, I'll say, right, I don't think it's good to swear in this environment because there's other kids who don't swear. So don't, you know, let's try not to. But, you know, they have a lot of freedom. So they know that when I say it's a safety thing, they listen.
Yeah.
But it's taken a long time for me to build up to that. And they're so PDA that they know if they want to do, like, they all like going to festivals, music festivals with just me. And so I'll make it clear, I'll go, we'll have a really fucking good time. But it's safety. You have to do what I say. Otherwise we'll have to stay in the caravan. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Because you can't risk it. And if it's not safe, I won't go. Like, if one of them's having a meltdown in a skiing holiday, everyone's prepared that we all go back to the room and we wait there until it's safe to go back out again.
And is everyone kind of on board? It sounds like you've got this sort of really interesting group dynamic where everyone is sort of like an army, right? You never leave a man behind, you know. But the army moves at the pace of its slowest person. So if someone needs to go back,
that is very true. And I know we're not talking about this, but that's why it's important for me to say, and why I'm really careful about giving parenting advice, because I think my children have all witnessed me be harmed. Then it levels it on an extreme level that could not really be achieved in other ways. So from that point of extreme despair and trauma, even though they were young, we built up together as a team.
They've
on
seen
a
you
level.
vulnerable, I guess. You know, that is an equalizer to a degree as well. I mean, which sounds, I mean, that you've managed to turn something incredibly positive and out of it is phenomenal.
You don't have a choice with some things. I think that's the thing I think about parenting SEND children. You wake up every morning, don't you? And you think, when you see your child's face and you know that nothing's happened, but there's going to be a hard day. And so many of the parents that we support, they're waking up every day to children who are like desolate about going to school. And, you know, every day is the same. You wake up and you think, you've only got, if you just think about how shit it is, like your whole life is fucked, really. Happy birthdays. Like, you know. So that's a jolly thing.
Obviously, you've got to make accommodations for when one child is triggering the other. And you also have to make sure that you've got an exit strategy in these situations sometimes. I've kind of had this camping, right? Camping's a big thing. So we talked about camping in our first episode. I love camping.
I do. Sound like, maybe we should go together.
Totally. I'm going this weekend with everyone. It's amazing.
Hey.
Everyone enjoys camping, but we made the mistake last year of going camping at a festival. You said that all your kids enjoy festivals. Now, Otto absolutely loves music and festivals, and we went to this local festival near us a few years ago, and just me and Otto, and we had the best time. He absolutely loved it, and I was like, wicked, this is a great festival, let's all go. The next year we brought Jay, and he fucking hated it because he likes camping, but he hates people. And I'd not twigged, right? I hadn't made that kind of connection in my head that this is going to be triggering to him. So he got there, and within 10 minutes, he was like, when are we going to leave this wretched place?
And then the vibe for everyone else is done, isn't it? You know, because he is the most in need there. And, you know, he is the most overwhelmed. So that happens to me all the time. That is where you have to really build a picture of your child's strengths and difficulties. With them in an honest way. Because I have children who are like your child who love loud music, but they hate people, you know, or they want to be at a festival, but they will not queue. And I'm talking like will not, you know, they like going on aeroplanes, but they can't be in an airport, you know, because it's too bright. So for each of the children, it takes a long time. You have to kind of, so when we're going to a festival coming up, and they all chose it for their Christmas present.
Yeah.
And so we're going all together, but the main thing is navigating how everybody can have their own good time.
Yeah.
Whilst all being supervised in some way by me, you know?
I mean, we tried with Jay for a little bit, and the only option really was that he just went home with so Tam, because this, again, we don't, it was an opportunity for us to all do something together, because it doesn't happen very often, and that was a really nice opportunity that we thought was going to work, and it turned out it didn't. So then he went home, and that's when we realized that we need to buy a blow up tent, because we need a tent you can put up by yourself and take down by yourself. Because I had to put down this massive tent on my own, with the other two not fucking helping, because of course they can't.
See, some of these are some of the things that when you're prepared to be a bit more weird, I'm prepared to be weird in public, and I don't give a fuck. Yeah. So like, we've gone before and like just slept in the back of the car, like as in so we don't have to put a tent up. Like, or just doing things differently. But I do think you said there that like Tam went home and you stayed, and I think that is one of the key things that you have to accept really quickly. Is I accept that I do not do a lot with all my children together now.
You just have to let go of it, right? You just go. We have to divide and conquer, and once you lean into that and go, this is where we are, this is what we are, we have to separate people out and do things differently. But there are times that it's quite sad, because there are things that we've traditionally been able to do as a family that now we can't, and that's like, so birthdays are a big thing in our household, right? And it was always a thing that everyone, so we have a rule in birthdays in our house that whoever's birthday it is makes up all of the rules for the day, including what we eat. We had marshmallow sandwiches one breakfast. It's about just making them in charge of the day, and it's really nice because everyone has always traditionally brought into it. And it was Jay's birthday first this year, and he set the tone of the day, and he was on super good form. He really enjoyed it, and he had a great day, and everyone buys into it because they all did. They're kids, they enjoy doing kid stuff. Great. Then it was Otto's birthday, and Jay has PDA, and also Otto is particularly triggering for Jay at the moment. And for the first year, he just wouldn't buy into it. Like, he was really furious about being out of control, of course. And now the more you know about the PDA, the more you realize what a terrible decision it was to allow another child in charge of the day.
I think that is where you can create, I say, like, a little girl. She won't like me calling her little, because she's also PDA. But she was at my house the other day, and she goes to me, "You haven't got any rules here, have you?" And I said, "Actually, I do." I said, "But they're not rules. As a family, we have values that we live by. There's no rules, but we live within those values. So, like, for example, respect each other, be kind to each other, nurture each other." We created these values on like a big poster as a family after we'd been through difficult times. And so we always come back. So even in those moments of extreme conflict, I will keep on reminding them that. So I might say something like, "In this house, we decided that we don't harm each other. We don't want to see harm in this house. So, like, what you're doing, like, is not in line with what we decided together."
Yes.
But with the birthday, if you're not at a point with your kids with my kids, I would go, like, you can choose to join in with the birthday idea, or you can choose not to. Each time we would have that, But it is a point where you got to go, like, actually, he's PDA, so he doesn't have a choice.
Well, this was the first year. This was the first year, really, that we kind of understood a bit more about his PDA profile, and that was triggering for him. So Tam and I spotted it before Otto. Basically, it was really important for us to give Otto that birthday experience, and that Jay wasn't going to take that experience away from Otto. We wanted to give him that day as he laid it out. So very early on, Tam and I spotted it. We gave each other the eyes of like, okay, just keep an eye on this, because he refused to sing Stevie Wonder's Happy Birthday. That's never a good sign, right? How
I
can
would
you not
have
sing
done that
right?
for Otto, yeah.
Okay. And he refused to eat the breakfast that he'd laid out, and you can see him just getting more and more kind of knotty and tight, and he was being really mean. And then Tam just took Jay away. They just went out for the day, and then I had a lovely day with Otto and India, following everything as it was, and Otto didn't even really notice. So we did that.
Yeah, you've done exactly the right thing, because in that moment you're respecting everybody. And I'm sure Tam then will have nice times with, so if I was doing that and I was going off, I would say, but I'm going to do it with you another day.
Yes.
So we'll do yours another day. And then one thing I do, my children are quite role play. They're quite, and I think you do get, so you get so many types of PDA. And my children can be kind of navigated into playful role play. So the first time I would have used that was when my youngest son started to become very demand avoidant, and my other children were too young to do things independently. So I first noticed it at Butlins. We'd all gone on holiday, and my PDA son would have been about 4 and there was no way to get him in places, and the other kids were like, we want to watch Diversity, man. We want a slush puppy. And this kid was like biting me. And so I quickly sort of thought, all my kids have had dummies for quite a long time, and he sucked a dummy till recently, very proudly. He's 9. So I created this role play where he was a baby. And so I went, baby, I realized he was scared, and that's why he was not able to go in. But if I was, I would then say stuff like, I'm going to be with Harry now because, he's the baby. I need to really care for him. Like, come here, come on. And it was almost like a game, but it allowed Harry to do things that he couldn't do in his own self.
Yes.
And so we ended up being able to do things. So for a long time, Harry, without reason, would sit in a buggy. And that made him safe, because then I was responsible for him. So although I was looking after everyone, I was his person. His twin would have been walking around, playing with the older kids. So I think it's about kind of working out. Some PDAs do not have that much of a kind of a humorous kind of role play side at times, and then you do have to just respect that they won't be able to join in. Like, that's what my 15-year-old's like.
Yeah, because I think with all of our kids, they all have completely different user manuals.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to find out what works for each individual one. And once you, obviously when you grow up believing they're neurotypical and you start looking at the books, the parenting books, and going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and then it's going to lead to this behavior. And then you sort of then understand a little bit more about it, and you go, well, then where's the pages for this fucking behavior?
Who's written this book? But then even the books, like you say, one day our children will wake up in one, I'm neurodivergent. Literally, day to day, I could wake up and one day feel desolate and one day feel like euphoric love for the planet. And there's no reason for the difference. It would just be small things. But I think one of the things you spoke about at the beginning of this little bit was like about the sadness.
Yes.
And I think I'm not a therapist, and in fact I've been to a lot of therapy and I've hated it all. But what I will say that I do is I recognize and I sit in that sadness. Like I don't ignore it. I don't pretend it's not there. I don't go, oh, this is so great. I'm like, I'm sad that my Christmases aren't what I thought, or I'm sad that this birthday hasn't worked out for this child.
Yeah.
And
it's so important to do that.
You have to, because otherwise you just, you feel like you're not giving yourself that love.
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, what I've done is slightly more extreme, in that I've devised a podcast.
Yeah.
And I invite other people on to talk about what makes them sad as well.
Oh, we can all cry
But
together. I think that's why I do my job. I've always done jobs. Part of my job is that I believe that I'm helping children and young people to have more safety and
Mhm.
more opportunities and to feel more included in the world. And I know that that makes their home lives more lively and successful and happy as well,
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, one of the things you kind of touched on, because you seem to have this unit, and it's genuinely impressive. Like the way that you wrangle them.
Yeah.
It's really impressive.
You're annoying now because I've kept this under wraps for years, like acting like I'm really low demand, and really now you've outed me as like an army sergeant. It's not
No,
going to
no,
do
I'm
much
not
for
saying
my.
you're a drill
No,
sergeant.
I am.
The army analogy wasn't. I can't imagine many army sergeants saying, "Get in the buggy." Oh, you're a little baby.
Yeah,
Can't
come on.
imagine that.
That would be in a different context, wouldn't it?
The other thing is doing this and balancing these needs as a single parent is fucking hard. I mean,
Yeah,
like I am a co-parent with Tam, and we are, we're on the same page, and we really kind of lean on each other, and we make it as equitable as possible. But a lot of the time, I'm solo parenting, and having to
yeah,
balance needs of different kind of dysregulation when there's just you is a fucking nightmare. And it's not always that bad, but how do you prioritize the different needs? That's the trickiest thing, I think, is how do you go, well, look, you are furious, you are crying, and you are selectively mute.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
You're all dysregulated, you're
You're
all really unhappy, and everyone thinks I'm an asshole.
You're doing exactly my parenting technique, which is, like I said, I notice I'm because I don't experience feelings very well, as in I don't experience them a lot. I'm not really interested in a lot of
Hmm.
emotional responses. So I try and sit and notice things, and I do exactly what you're doing. When it's unbearable, I will just notice what's going on in that moment. And I will always go for safety, but I will go, okay, so you're having a shit day. You're having a shit day. You're right. Do people want to just have shit days, or do they want to work out a way forward?
So you vocalize it,
Yeah,
you
so
kind of
I'll
sit
give
everyone
them an
around and go,
option. I'll
okay.
say, right, okay, this is not working out how we thought. And it's starting to feel like this is actually what I say. It's starting to feel quite unsafe for me. So if it's going to carry on like this, we're going to have to get back in the car and go back to the house.
Okay.
Because they're all very goal driven, every day and every moment, I try and create either short term, immediate like goals that we want to achieve together, or longer term. So this Ocean Fest goal of being away together,
Yeah.
I always have a long term one that I can use in moments to go. So when my son is being very violent, I have actually said to him, I know you really want to come to that caravan, but this would not be safe in that caravan. So I'm constantly pinning the current day to the
Real world
future.
consequences to
Yeah,
what he's
to the
doing. Yeah.
consequences and the future goals.
So obviously, I don't want to be seen favouring one child. They're all dysregulated.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be seen favouring one child over the other. But as you say, safety is kind of the top of the priorities at this point. So by its nature, then it's the PDA child that gets the most attention at that point, because they're the loudest and the angriest and the most likely to kind of have an outburst. So there's the top of that kind of hierarchy of needs, really. And it seems to fall naturally into then underneath that, you've got the non-masking presentation of autism, right, which is Otto, so he'll be crying and like completely like melting down, so you've obviously got to jump on that. And then sadly at the bottom of that hierarchy is the masking version, which is India, and I hate that. I hate that is kind of forced on me, and I wish I knew a way of making it more even, and it's really hard. Tell me how to do it, Jess.
Okay, here's a top tip. So I never prioritize anyone. Like, to me, I will say, like, you might be swearing in my face, but like he's crying over there. So why does your swearing over supersede him? They're all just expressions of all of those behaviours are behaviours. They're like the top of the iceberg. Now, you are choosing yourself because of your sensory profile, which one you prioritise. If your PDA is being physically violent, yeah, and you remove them so they're not harming anybody else, I find, this sounds weird, but I find people who are crying really intense and overwhelming because I don't know what to do. I'm more comfortable with people shouting at me than people crying. Okay. So I often think that people respond, they often prioritise PDA behaviours because their own sensory profile makes them. I'm quite vibing off like a PDA kid who's like, yeah, that's why these, like, I have like sometimes about 12 teenage boys at my house going, right, Jess, you've been on TikTok, get on TikTok, and that's fine for me. I like that loudness. And I find actually like prioritizing the masking child when you know what masking can lead to.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The PDA child, they're actually getting their shit out there. Sing with them, shout with them, but the masking child is harder for them.
What I end up doing is just taking the PDA child out of the equation.
Yeah.
Because he needs to regulate. So that's, do you know what? Let's just you do what you need to do. Typically screen time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to apologize for that. That's what he needs to do to regulate, and that's what we need to do to get some semblance of control back into things. Then that's instantly removes some of the kind of pressure from the situation, and you can.
I think that's a really good technique. So you find out my 12-year-old, my daughter, she's very, very she's very funny, and she's like got a kind of like gangster persona, but she has meltdowns all the time, and they're very loud crying, and she will not back down. But with her, like, because I can't leave my younger PDA in the room with other children, I can't go off with her. And she can't be left in the room with my PDA son. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with her, I actually just parrot the same thing over and over again in a really low tone. I'll go, leave the room, go upstairs, go on your phone. Leave the room, go upstairs, come back when you're ready, go upstairs. And she'll be going like really, full. And I will just keep saying that until she like leaves the room. That's the only thing I can do, because I can't actually remove her, because then, I'm leaving a potential risk,
Yeah, but there's the mental load that we have to deal with to juggle this kind of thing. Because this is stuff that you're like super experienced at this, but it's still a lot. There's the amount of cogs that are whirring in any given moment to try and sort of balance these different needs and these different situations. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting.
When you say about being a lone parent, you are in a house with 3 of your children alone. Sometimes I'm sometimes with 5, but in a school setting, some of these children, they've got 2-to-1, 1-to-1, and then at home in the holidays, parents are just expected to cope.
Yeah, exactly.
COVID, don't even get me started on COVID.
That's a whole nother episode at some point. But I mean, ultimately as well, the person that doesn't get prioritized enough in this is the parent.
Yeah.
Like, that is so hard, because obviously, there are times where you just need to go, you know what? I need some time. I just need, just like, everyone get out. Just go to your room.
Yeah.
You go to that room. You go to that room. You take the Switch. You take the iPad. You go and play football in the garden. I just need to sit and just have a moment of calm. And it's quite hard to get that
That's
done.
where you also have to just forgive yourself, because
forgiveness is really important.
You have to say, there are many times, particularly when I'm going through difficult work things or personal things myself, there'd be many times when I'll say, like, myself and my son Harry, who's my 9-year-old, I'll say, we're going to my room now. Because the other ones can all be like in the house. We've got a big house. They go into their own spaces. They do their tech. But I will be in the room with Harry, and he'll be next to me. He has the headphones on. He's watching TikTok. And I will just literally stare at my phone and look at TikTok or work or, do something. And I don't now feel guilty for doing that at all. I don't care, because, I have to regulate. You've got to just let yourself off and
I do. That's
be kind to yourself and think that you're every day, even when I shout, I lose control of my own self. I'll cry in front of my children. I think that is one of the things about being a big team. My children see everything about me. And because of that, I will say to them, you can see I'm really tired now. I'm so tired. And in some neurotypical families, that'd be like, why are you guilt tripping your own kid? But, when you have children who really need all of you all the time, you have to be honest with them. PDAers, they want honesty. They see through you.
Yeah.
They know that I'm like, they'll say stuff to me like, oh, if I've got a boyfriend, they'll be like, oh, has your boyfriend dumped you? You look a bit sad. And I'm like, no. they know stuff before me, like they're very intuitive, PDAers, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's not easy, is it? But
if you've got other adults, you can give each other time. So,
well, that's what we're doing more now.
Yeah.
So Tam and I, because we're separated, we're getting time. The dividing and conquering happens less because it's like it's all or nothing very often. But there are times where we can do that, and that's quite nice.
And you can still plan in respite, for yourself.
Yeah.
In that time, and if you do it properly, like plan in time. Don't be annoyed at the other person when they go off for a run or when you go off to have some break. When it's your time, you do whatever you want to do. You sit and stare at TikTok. There's no judgment, but when you plan that in, it's coming. And although I'm a lone parent, I have a lot of friends and who get my kids, and I have my parents who will give me that respite if I need it.
Yeah, which is amazing, and you're very fortunate in that sense.
I am. There's so many people who don't have that.
Don't have that. They, I mean, my parents, Tam's mum, don't really have the kids, and it's really hard.
That's another episode where the episode could be called "No One Else Will Take All My Children at One Time," or "Why Will No One?"
Or even one of them.
Yeah.
Just they're like, I don't fancy that. No. Neither do I. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Just once, please. It's my 50th birthday.
One of the things I wanted to kind of touch on, really, you talk to your kids very openly. They're all aware of each other's needs, which I find really interesting because my kids all know that each other's autistic, but they don't really have an awareness of what each of them needs, or really any kind of willingness to give them what they need.
Yeah.
So we know when Jay is dysregulated and he's feeling aggressive and angry and kind of a bit snippy, and give him some space. But there's also I don't think that India is given accommodations enough. So like Otto sometimes will just deliberately wind her up and deliberately annoy her, and she will I'll be seeing it from a mile off. She's getting more and more wound up, and Otto, for whatever reason, just gets this little urge to just keep pushing it, and I have to sort of step in. But I kind of wish that they were a bit more aware of what each other needs. And it feels like, from what you're saying, that comes a little bit more with age and possibly a little bit more with openness, talking about it. And I think that's something I could probably take.
The thing that's really important, my children don't have a problem with the whole world knowing they're autistic. They love being on my Facebook. They embrace who they are as people, but they all have a lot of friends who are also cool autistic people. And I know I'm in a bubble, which is very, very special, in terms of I have loads of like autistic author friends and, funky DJs who are autistic, but loads of children that I know and we support through our work, they will not allow anybody to talk about their needs. And that is really, really difficult because, if you have a child who has a really high level of sensory need and their sibling knows that and is targeting that by like chewing loudly or, you can't scaffold that. You can't say it's an autistic need because lots of young people and children won't have people say they're autistic. They don't want a diagnosis. They don't want to be different.
Yeah.
So then my technique doesn't work. It only works with my children because of who we are.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my kids are all they're aware. We talk about autism and we talk about their needs a lot.
In your family, do you talk about your own needs?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I think that is something that really helps me. So the adults in my family, any adult who comes into my house needs to understand their needs are going to be, spoken about. Because as adults, we are older people who can role model being open. So I'll say, that's too loud for me, dude. Turn it down. I can't cope with that. Like, I'm autistic. What are you doing? When I do that, it creates space for my children to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that, then you can't expect them to do it themselves.
That's really interesting because I identify as neurotypical. I've yet to be proven otherwise. But I mean,
I've got a whole podcast about neurodivergent families, but I identify as neurotypical. Oh, right.
I do. But it is. So I my needs are deprioritized completely in my head, and you're right. They absolutely shouldn't be, and it should be an important part of
Neurotypical
the
people
conversation.
have I was neurotypical for 38 years. I had the same needs as I've got now. Okay,
so are you diagnosing me live on my own podcast?
No, but I'm saying, like, I think that is the key way if you want your children to feel empowered to behave and to share and go, I'm overwhelmed now, I need to leave. I mean, your kids are already doing it, but they're doing it in a way. And that's the other thing is when my kids tell me something, even if I'm somewhere and my kid goes, I fucking hate this, it is awful, I want to leave, I fucking want to leave, I am not bothered about the swearing. I actually praise them. Honestly, I'm finding this shit as well. Let's go, right? And but then after we're in a safe space, then I'll go, I found that so loud. And often for my kids, they feel unsafe with people. They'll go, I didn't like that man. He was looking at me all the time and he wasn't funny and he had trousers on where he thought he was funny. And, I just let them let out as much information.
You talk it out a lot, I think. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna try that tomorrow morning. My kids are not gonna know what hit them. I'll be like, okay, guys, you are being too loud. You can the attitude because I find that very upsetting.
Well, what about this? I would do this in my house. I'd be like, listen, she might be masking, but she is probably having a shitter time than all of you. So why don't you just show her some respect? When they're all neurodivergent.
Yeah. Well, I'll see how that goes. I'll report back.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that might be triggering in its own way to some of the personnel in my household, but we'll see how it goes.
It's a very slow journey. I've been a lone parent for the entirety of my children's upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 15, my oldest are 15. So, I've got a lot of experience. But still try.
No, I will. Yeah. But it's just bringing that into the common experience of our household, isn't it? Yeah. It's about sort of saying, well, I'm going to talk about this because it's usually it happens when it's enough, and I'm like, right, dude, I am literally making 3 separate dinners because you'll all eat different things.
Yeah.
Right. I've had to clear all of your shit from the door when you came in from the garden.
Yeah.
You're asking me to play a game. He's shouting at me because he doesn't know the Wi-Fi password.
Yeah.
This is all too much. And when I do that and I bring it to that level, it's not going to help anyone. Because it's overwhelming for everyone. Whereas if I was gonna, it'd probably be more useful if I sort of drip fed it and there was a little bit calmer about it and go, I'm not going to deal with that right now.
I just do it all the time, but it's kind of just this slow drip feeding.
It's not all rubbish.
So we're going to get on to the positive side of things now, because it's obviously, it's not all moaning, is it, Jess? There are positives. Like to having siblings in a neurodivergent household, there are some huge positives about this. And you've illustrated this really beautifully, that they kind of act as a team. I mean, they've all got competing needs, but fundamentally they kind of pull in the same direction when they need to. Now, in my household, I don't think they realize how close they are.
Yeah.
And they get each other, and there's a commonality of experience there that they have that is unique. So whenever we go to a different place with them and there are other kids playing around, they'll find each other, they play with each other because they get each other.
Yeah.
They've learned this little communication style, they've learned these little in jokes and these in games. When they're in the mood, they'll do that, and that's a really lovely thing, because not everyone gets them. If you think about in everyday life, how many people they come into contact with who don't get them and don't tolerate them and don't understand them.
No, there's not, my kids will often, and I'm talking about from the top age to the bottom, will sit in separate rooms and play Roblox together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them can't read or write, so he's just like shouting at everybody. The others are all like higher, they're talking on Roblox to each other. And in another family, that would seem weird. They'd sit at the dinner table, right? They've all got TikTok on really loudly. No one notices anyone else's loud TikTok. And I'm there going, oh my, this is hell. But they just like being together, parallel playing.
Okay.
So, wherever we go, they parallel play together. But I'm telling you, if anyone messes with any of them, they will stand up for them with like a fierce advocacy, and they kind of really support each other. And the key is like building this team where it's we're all a bit weird together, and oh, you're a bit weird like that, I'm a bit weird like this, let's just all just be weird, and actually like enjoy the weirdness, because being that way is like, it is fun.
Yeah, we definitely are starting to engender that spirit now. I think a lot more of just being a little bit different, a bit alternative. And I think
the more you do it as well, the more other families. So if you go camping and you set up a lovely little autistic nest in your car, yeah, with blacked out windows, and your kid is sat in there for the whole camping trip, happy as Larry, and you're serving him food and he's on his tech, right? The more families out in the world living in a truly embracing neurodivergent manner,
mm-hmm.
the more other people look and go, well, they're not sitting at the dinner table. Why do we? Let's do something different. Let's and that's how more children and families will become more included in festivals and parties,
Yes, without fear of being judged.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Neurodiversity champions.
Okay, so it's the neurodiversity champions section now. So on Neuroshambles, I always like to mention people or organisations or entities that are championing neurodiversity and really supportive of that. Have you got any neurodiversity champions for us, Jess?
Well, I just have 3 friends who I absolutely love, who are also in the neurodiverse, they work in the field. One of them is Charlie Gray. She runs My Neurodivergent Adventure, and she just lives so intuitively in the world as an autistic adult with autistic children.
What's My Neurodivergent Adventure?
It's a blog post, but she works with me. So we run my business like together. She basically runs it. I just like talk a lot. The thing I love about her, she's got all these like magnificent like Lego and toys and like squishies and like, fidget things. She's like living as a magnificent autistic child, but as an adult. It's so cool, and so that inspires me, and it's inspired my children, me getting to know her. Eliza Fricker.
Oh yeah.
Is a really good friend of mine. Me, Eliza, and Laura Kirby from Past, and Charlie Gray, we are all in a WhatsApp group where we basically just have really intense PDA chat all day.
Okay.
Like, humour. But both of those are really kind of like forward thinking, passionate about inclusivity, but also honest about what's realistic.
Yeah.
I just love people who think of being neurodivergent as a more kind of like just something that's amazing and magical.
So I know Eliza. Eliza does wonderful illustrations, which I love, and I've just got can't not won't, and so Laura, I'm not sure.
Laura Kirby, she has written lots of books about PDA. She goes into businesses and trains businesses, trains schools. She used to be a head teacher. They do a lot of assessments. So very intelligent, ADHD diagnosed and autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And just she writes a lot of books that Eliza then illustrates.
Oh, lovely.
They're
Nice.
little buddies. They always do
Little
stuff
team.
together and just leave me and Charlie Gray out because they live near each other. So they're off the friend list now. Scratch them off.
I've got a neurodiversity champion.
Who's yours?
Being in Brighton, I'm going to give a shout out to Brighton Fringe. So Brighton Fringe Festival is the biggest arts festival in England, not in the UK. Obviously, that belongs to the Edinburgh Festival, which is massive. But this year, for the first year, I think, they introduced an Outstanding Neurodiverse Performance Award.
Oh.
So they said, like, this year, more than 160 performers identified as neurodiverse. Which is the largest number they've ever.
That's not a surprise, is it?
No, in the artistic community, no, it's not. So they had a prize specifically for neurodiverse performers, which I think is wicked. Like it's the first I've ever heard of that kind of thing happening.
Embracing really that, like, it is so fantastic in going. You can just be totally yourself, who you need to be.
So the award winner this year was Sarah Jane Harvey for her show Neurochatter.
Yes.
So Sarah Jane Harvey was the neurodiversity champion on the last episode, mentioned by Lisa Galley, and like the next day won the award. Now, I am not saying that Neuroshambles Shout Out had any influence on it.
Yeah.
But if you look at the timeline, you do ask some questions, right?
I'm going to be up all night now watching her to see her humour and how great she is.
I think it was a theatre piece.
Was it a theatre?
Yeah. So she goes by the Instagram handle Agony Auty.
Yes, I do follow her. Okay. I do really like her, and I like how genuine and honest she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So well done to Sarah Jane Harvey for that. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And she's doing shows in Manchester, Edinburgh, and Liverpool. So check that out on Instagram for more details. I'll put all the details in the show notes.
Tiny epic wins.
Okay, it's the Tiny Epic Wins section now. These are everyday occurrences that in a neurotypical household would not be any great shakes, but in a neurodivergent household are considered epic wins. Do you have? I mean, you've got so many people in your household. You must be having some tiny epic wins in there.
I do. I had one this week, which was just, and it's very basic and dull. But I don't get any of my children to clean up or, do anything like that. But they all do cook because they love eating food. But they never clean up. And my daughter brought down her washing. She's home educated. She's 12. And she went away to Thorpe Park today. And she brought down her washing, washed it herself to go on this trip, put it in the dryer, asked me a basic normal question about drying the clothes, and then took it upstairs. And I literally was sat on my computer working. And when she walked out with like the clean, dry clothes, I was like, fucking hell.
That's massive.
But normally I notice things like I've said in my house.
Yeah.
I did not say a word because I was like, she's PDA. I thought if I say one thing,
that will never happen again.
That'll never happen again. I can't praise her, but I was like, oh my God. Oh my God.
That's wicked. Yeah, that's amazing.
What's yours?
Nice. Well, I've got
Look how I'm trying to be really neurotypical with the ping pong chat. What's yours, Mark?
So I've got two.
Yeah.
So the first one, so I mentioned that it was Jay's birthday.
Yeah.
And obviously it's all about the birthday person in our household. And India handmade a birthday card for Jay. That's the thing that we kind of do in our house.
Yeah.
We just have some blank cards. They make cards for everyone, and it's nice. It's just a nice thing. But for some reason, she really phoned it in this time. She didn't really put in the effort. Like India normally puts in a lot of effort, but for whatever reason, it was a bit of a shambles, right? So there was spelling mistakes. The word birthday was like on two separate lines. There was like it was a picture of an eyeball.
She wasn't masking her hatred for him. She'd given up. She's like, you annoyed me yesterday. Here's the card.
Maybe that's what it was. But now normally if Jay receives something that I'll charitably call Slapdash, right? He will critique it within an inch of its life, right? He will be pulling it apart and just like saying why it's shit. And he didn't. He just took it and he went, "Thanks, India," and then carried on.
Oh,
And I was just like, "Hang on a second,
I
what?"
feel like, listen, maybe because you're neurotypical, you don't understand this, but that was like neurodivergent respect. Like she was
I
just
know.
being her true self, and he was just like, "Wow, well done there, man."
You think it was that? It
Like,
was
no, maybe he just wanted to move on to the next bit where he got to be in charge.
maybe
But
got more
you know,
presents and cards to open. But either way, I handed it to him with
yeah.
a level of fear and trepidation,
I feel like
knowing
I'd
that,
love to spend time with him because my entire life is slapdash, and I
yeah.
really love it when like kids just follow me around,
Oh
telling
man.
me how shit I am, because
Oh, he would.
I
He
just
would.
get enjoyment out of it. I'm like, what else you got there, mate? What else you got? Because that's not hitting the
Oh,
sides.
he's got plenty in reserve. Don't
I
worry
can
about
make you a shitter card than that.
that. The other tiny epic win is again one for Jay, and it sounds ridiculous if you don't have a neuroshambolic household.
Yeah.
Um, Tam and I were having a conversation, and Jay joined in. Right, right. We were having a chat about something in Tam's life, and Jay was sat there and he listened to it. He was eating his food at the time, right? But he was listening to it, and then he just joined in. Me and Tam were like, hang
I'm
on a
just
second.
laughing because, if I don't know how old you are, but like if you take yourself back to like maybe like 19, 20, did you ever think that would be like,
No, I
you
thought
just
that would
go,
be the standard.
I
I
had a
thought we'd all.
conversation, you can't understand how magnificent that is
It's
when
such a time.
normally they interject, like you could be talking about something so
Yeah,
important. And my kids have this thing that they say quite often. They go, I don't mean to go off topic, but I just need to
yeah,
ask. I need these shoes and I need them now. They're 500 quid.
yeah,
You're like, that was totally off topic. I'm
yeah, yeah.
talking about like, a
But no, it
funeral.
was astonishingly appropriate. His
Yeah.
his interjection. He asked a question, he then offered an opinion, and like he left the room, and me and Tam were like, "Oh my god, did you see that?" And like it was a little moment we had. It was really
You did
sweet.
it. You did the same as me. Don't look too excited.
Yeah, yeah,
If you
exactly.
look
You
too
don't.
excited, that's it. If I hate praise and I don't, if people tell me I'm good, I'm never doing that again because I don't need someone
Yeah,
else to tell me I'm good at something. Then I'm not doing it. But so if you praise them, you're like,
no, we
that's
did
it.
not praise him.
No.
No, we just let it sit in the moment, and then we got excited afterwards. It was nice. It was a lovely moment.
What the flip?
It's the what the flip section of the podcast now, which is the part where we sort of share anecdotes about our kids where they've said or done something that has genuinely just put us at a loss as to how to respond. You get those moments where you just stuck to the spot, not knowing what on earth you're supposed to say or do in that situation. So I've got two this week. Okay, one of them was just something that Jay said, where I was taking Otto away for the weekend for some one-on-one time, because again that's really important, especially with your neurodivergent kids, and kind of making sure that siblings get their own
Yes.
space, right?
Yes.
Took Otto away, and Tam told Jay, and Jay is struggling with a lot of people in the house at the moment. And Tam went, Otto isn't around today, so you'll have an easier time. And he went, is India going too? And Tam went, no. And his response was, so what you're saying is you're taking Tweedledum away, but you're leaving Tweedledee. What's the difference?
I love him. He's my best friend.
He's 11 and he speaks like a 70-year-old.
Oh. He just sees the world in the way, it's just a genuine, honest truth when you go, yeah,
it is.
mate.
Yeah. The other one he did yesterday, I was helping set up something, and I was like, oh, I'm just being a bit efficient here. And he went, you have one efficient bone in your body, and that is your moustache.
That's when you go, oh, I didn't really feel like I had much of it. That's what my kids would say to me. I'd be
there
like,
were so many things that I was just like, I don't have a moustache, right? And a moustache is not a bone as well. Let's not
but do you ever wish that you see? I'm like him, right? In day-to-day life, I say anything that comes into my mouth, and my kids are the ones who would have your reaction. They go, "Mum, what are you
what on
doing?"
earth are you on about? Before we end this podcast, I'm going to let the listeners know that the next episode is going to be the last Neuroshambles episode in the current season. I'm not ending it. I'll be honest. I just need a fucking break. I'm exhausted, Jess.
I feel like I should have been doing some pantomime.
No.
Dude, I'm happy for you. You are starting to take control of your sensory overwhelm. You're opening up
You're right. That's
you're
exactly
saying,
what I'm doing.
listen, I need a break.
Yeah.
I'm close to burnout. I need to have some fun.
Because, there's a lot of prep and booking guests and recording and editing and doing the promote. And I've got a fairly busy life. I think we've established this already.
I've gathered,
So I am basically going to end season 1 after episode 20, which is the next one. And then I'm going to have the summer off and then come back for the schools coming back to school. So people have got a little lift. Basically, if you're wondering where I've gone, I haven't disappeared. I just getting my shit together, ready for season 2, which I'm very excited about already.
I am too.
Good. So that is it for this episode of Neuroshambles. Jess, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your neuroshambolic lifestyle and giving me genuine wisdom and things that I can take forward. You didn't mean it.
The best thing about being me is I've forgotten everything we talked about already.
Well, so now it's recorded for posterity.
Yeah, it's all with you now. You can do with it what you like.
So it's been lovely to talk to you. So thank you for sharing that. I will, of course, thank all of our listeners for continuing to listen to Neuroshambles and for sharing it on all the socials. So we are on Facebook and Instagram, and we're on Threads. And if you've got anything you want to share or any topics you think we should cover in season 2, please email me at hello@neuroshambles.com. And I do tend to respond to all of those emails because I don't actually get too many.
Yeah.
So I will probably get back to you if you want to email in.
Well, I did want to say actually that we have a Facebook page and we have a Facebook group. And so parents talk about these kind of things because I'm always mindful that a lot of people listen to this and it stimulates thoughts and difficulties. We do have a membership, but we also have a gifted membership. So if people are on a low income or they are suffering financial abuse, then they can email us and you can put the details or I'll tag it under.
Yeah, no, I'll put it in the details.
And we gift people a membership for 3 months. And lots of our members, although we talk about EHCPs, a lot of them come in and they rant and they will share about these things. And, we do it all on email because actually that's often the only way that parents can do that because they're surrounded by their kids all the time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I just think it's nice that there's spaces because they are really serious things that we've been talking about, which do, impact people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll give me the details.
I will,
that's the Send Family Instincts membership.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's fantastic. Thank you for that, Jess. All right, I think we're done. So
thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome.
That's how formal I am. Thank you very much.
All that remains for me to say is thank you to everyone for listening and have a nice life.